Good morning, everyone.
Good morning, Rabbi.
We are learning Mishna Yishkalim, Perek Beis, Chapter 2, Mishna Dala, Mishna 4. Mishnah 4 is a continuation from the previous Mishnah. The previous Mishnah we found in the opinion of Beis Hillel, the Academy of Hillel, we said that in a case where a person says, these monies that I'm collecting are going to go towards my shekel donation, Beis Hillel said, if it comes out that you designated more than half a shekel's worth, that extra amount was mistakenly designated for shekel, and it remains regular money. But in the case where a person said, these monies are going towards a sin offering, and then it comes out he has more than he needs for the sin offering, then there Beis Hillel said that the extra monies are consecrated, because we consider that money, although you were saying it's for your offering, and you didn't need that extra money towards a sin offering, nonetheless, Beis Hillel will say it's consecrated, and you have to use it toward sacrifices. It's not going to be your sacrifices were brought on the altar when the altar didn't have a lot of sacrifice being offered at that time. So now the question is, what's the difference? Why do we say by collecting it to the shekel that the extra coins are not consecrated, while in the case of the money going towards the sin offering, we say the extra money is consecrated? Why do we say there too? If he would have realized that he had enough for a sin offering, then we would say that he wasn't going to go in and it was a mistake to consecrate more. Once he doesn't need the money for the sin offering, we should consider it a mistake, erroneous, as we did in the case of the shkalim. That's the Mishnah. Reb Shimon said, what's the difference between the case of the shkalim and the case of the sin offering? Why do the extra monies by the shkalim are not consecrated according to Beis Hillel? And why is it that the extra money towards the sin offering is? And that, Reb Shimon explained, shkalim yesh lahem kitzva. Shkalim have a set amount to them. V'chatas ein la kitzva. And a sin offering doesn't have that amount. Meaning, as we learned previously, when we talk about this half shekel fee, or whatever you call it, this half shekel that everybody has to give towards their share in the communal sacrifices, we say you want to give more, you can't give more. A half shekel, and that's it. Nothing more. And therefore, when the person is collecting towards the half shekel, and it comes out that that the money that he was designating towards it was more than he needed, so we say it was a mistake, because he can't give more anyway than that. So it's a mistake. And if it's a mistake, it's not consecrated. The chatas ein la kitzva, but a sin offering has no amount. There is actually a minimum amount that you have to give towards, meaning the value of the animal that you bring towards the chatas has a minimum amount. I don't remember what it is. It has a minimum amount. But do you want to go in and give more? You want to go in and spend as much money as you want on your sin offering? Go ahead. There's no limit. Therefore, when this person is collecting money towards the sin offering, and he goes more than he would actually need, but that doesn't mean that he's not consecrating, that he's not designated for the chatas. The chatas can be as much money as you want to pay for it. So therefore, when the person here is going ahead and he's giving money, and it comes out he's designating more money than he needs for the sin offering, that doesn't mean to say it's a mistake. We say we can say that he's giving it towards the sin offering, because there's no limit to how much you want to pay for a sin offering. So therefore, Beis Hillel say the extra money for the sin offering is consecrated. Now, at the end of the day, you bought a certain animal. The animal only costs a certain amount of money, and there's leftover money. Okay, so the leftover money has to now go towards that fund for the sacrifices for the altar. But to say that it's erroneous, based on what? He's giving money towards the sin offering. That money could go towards the sin offering, and we say that doing.
Is he holding the money for the chatos?
He's putting aside money for the chatos.
He's not bringing it to the base of mikdash. He's still holding the money.
This is not shekel. This is for his personal sin offering.
But he's holding that money.
I don't know what you mean by holding. It's by him. It's not anywhere else.
He's not putting it into the account of in the base of mikdash.
There is no such thing for that. When you bring if you're setting aside money for your own sin offering, for your own money, that means you're holding it and you're going ahead and then buying an animal with it.
All right.
That's what you're doing. I mean, It could be that there was such a thing. I mean, we do find there are such a thing. There are certain things that there were. I shouldn't say there was no such thing as that in the Beis Hamikdash, but at the end of the day, you have to collect all your money for that you need for buying an animal. But in this case, you're sure holding on to the so that's Reb Shimon's explanation. Sounds like a good explanation, right? Half a shekel. That's all you got to do. An animal for the sin offering, as much as you want. So the more you're giving towards it, we say you're giving towards the sin offering. Now it comes out that you get ahead and you don't need this money for the sin offering, doesn't mean it's a mistake. It's extra. Now, if you says, wait a minute. Even when it comes to shkalim, we can say there's no limit to it. There's no set amount. Why is that? Meaning, again, Rabbi Yehuda was saying the shekel is a set amount, this much and no more. Now, Rabbi Yehuda says, I'll show you that that's not so. Even shkalim don't have a set amount. Why is that? So listen to this interesting historical account of the giving of shkalim. When the Jewish people came out from the exile, meaning they came from Babylonia to the end of Eretz Yisrael, the coins that they would give towards the community. Let's put it this way: the coin that they gave towards the half shekel donation, the coin that they used for giving their share of the communal sacrifices, was called a darkain. It was a gold coin, meaning. The point of the Mishnah is going to be like this. Although we said you can't give more than a half shekel, but half shekel is not only half shekel. Half shekel is really half the currency being used. So in the times of the Torah, the currency was a shekel. So therefore, when you give half of the currency, it's half a shekel. That's why we call it a half shekel, because when the Torah told us to do it, the currency being used was the shekel, and therefore we say half of the currency is what you give towards your communal sacrifice, and that was a half a shekel. But when they came back to Eretz Yisrael, and Eretz Yisrael was under the Malchus Madai, the Median Empire, there the currency was a darkin, this gold coin called a darkin. And therefore, if that was the currency, then they were using half of that. They were giving half of that towards what we call the shekel. Because of the fact that you don't have to give, it's not only a half a shekel, it's half the currency, okay? But that was more than the regular currency. It was more than the regular. The half shekel that we started at the Torah telling us to give, it came out that a darkain was double that. Darkain was double that. So it was more than what the Torah originally said, but it was half of the going rate. Now, Chazru Lishkol Slayim. And then after the Median Empire collapsed, they went back to using Slayim. Selah is the same thing as the shekel. The shekel of the Torah and the Selah that the Mishnah refers to are the same coin. It's a silver coin. That became now the going coin. And therefore now, what did they start? What was that? So what do they now have to give towards their obligation of half shekel? A half a shekel. An actual half a shekel. It went back to what the Torah was telling them to do. Because it went back to that same currency. Okay, it changed, right? We went from the shekel to the then for some reason, what did they start using? A smaller coin. That was their currency, called a tava. Tavain is plural. Now, what's interesting about this one is this tavayin, these new coins were half of they themselves were let me get this straight. I have to make sure I have to get my calculation straight. Okay, you had the selah, right, and you would give a half a selah when the selah was the currency. The tavayin were themselves a half selah. Themselves were a half shekel. And therefore, ubikshalish called dinarim. So now to give half of that currency would have been now what we call a dinar, which is a smaller coin. The Tavoya themselves were a half a shekel. They consisted of 2 dinars, which means if you want to give half of that coin, you're going to give 1 dinar, which is less than what the Torah wants you to give. Because the Torah said half a shekel. Half a shekel was of the Torah shekel. And a shekel of the Torah, this coin called the Teva. So that means if you're going to use, even if that's new currency, if you're going to give half of that, you're going to give less than what the Torah had said to give. And that you can't do. That's why it says, Ubikshu lishkal dinarim. They wanted to now give a dinner for the half shekel, but they couldn't. Because even if we say you can give more than what the Torah is half shekel, that's only if the currency is more, not if the currency is less. When we say that that you give half the half currency, not necessarily a half shekel, but half the going currency, only if that half is more than what the Torah itself had mentioned. Once it's less, that you can't do. And that's derived from a verse in the Torah. Okay, so the question is, but now after we went all through that, Rabbi Huda's point is, you see, shekel doesn't have a set amount either. Sometimes the shekel, that it's coin, sometimes it's worth more, sometimes it's worth more. Whatever. No, it's not about the inflation or not. It's more about the value of the coin itself. Was it gold? Was it silver? How much silver was it? That's what it had to do with. Now, the point is that so a shekel also fluctuated. So you're telling, so Rabbi Huda says to Rabbi Shimon, you said the difference between the shekel and the sin offering was the shekel has a set amount. The sin offering doesn't have a set amount. Shekels don't have a set amount either. So Omar Rabbi Shimon said, even so, Yad Kulan Sheva. Everybody still gives the same amount. Meaning, even if the amount of the shekel, what we give towards the shekel mitzvah, can be a different amount, but everybody's got to give the same. It was the dark coin, everybody gave half a dark coin. No one can give more than half a dark coin. That you can't do. You give half the currency, but the Torah says you cannot give more than that half currency. Everyone has to give the same amount. Well, if everybody has to give the same amount, and he's going ahead, so whatever the amount may be, but if it's the amount of half the currency, and that's all you can give, and when he was setting aside the money, he said, "I'm giving this is towards my shekel." Well, we can't say he's giving more than half of that, because he can't give more than half of that, and therefore it's a mistake. And if it's a mistake, I'll say it's not consecrated. When it comes to a sin offering, maybe basala. One person brings his offering for 1 selah. Maybe b'shtayim. The other one decides, I'm going to give a bigger animal. I'm going to give an animal worth 2 slayim. Maybe b'shalosh. And this one, if he decides, he can buy an animal for 3. So since each person has no set amount of how much he has to pay towards the sin offering, so now when he's giving the money, and the money may be more than what he needs for a sin offering, but since it could be for a sin offering, because you could buy a sin offering for any money you want, that money is considered we say he's giving that money towards the sin offering. And so even if at the end, when he buys the animal, he's got extra money left, we don't say it's a mistake, because he was giving it towards he was giving it towards the sin offering. At the end, he didn't need it. Well, it was consecrated towards that sin offering. It's consecrated to be used as a sacrifice. So therefore, it's got to be given towards that fund that we use for the sacrifices on the altar when it's not being used. But that's the difference why one is considered a mistake and one is not considered a mistake. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you, Reverend.
Thank you, Rabbi.